Welcome to Strength for Today's Pastor, conversations with current senior pastors and leaders which will strengthen and help you in your pastoral ministry. And now, here's your host, Bill Holdridge of Poimen Ministries.
Welcome to podcast 176. Today we're going to feature a message on the subject of the use of iPhones or other devices and social media. And we're going to go to the book of Proverbs in this message to discover what God has to say about this and other related themes. By the way, the message is delivered by my son, Nate, who pastors Calvary Monterey in Monterey, California, obviously. And he delivered this message recently, and he texted me about the fact that he had delivered a message like this and that there was outrageous reception to the message. So, in response to that, I listened to the message and I thought, this is huge. This is pertinent. So give it a listen, and then we'll come back at the end of the lesson and make some final comments.
All right, we are in Proverbs, and as I've been telling you, we're looking at different themes or subjects in the book of Proverbs. And today we're going to think about what Proverbs might say to us about our phones and the way that we handle them. So I'm really going to do it. You guys laugh every time I say that I'm going to do this. There's like chuckling. Do you think I'm not going to do this? I am going to do this. I am going to clothe myself with the spirit and embodiment of Grandpa Simpson, who yells at the clouds and says, "Get off my lawn." That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to be a grumpy old guy talking about the phone. So a few years ago, there was a small boarding high school in Massachusetts, Buxton School, real small school. They made a radical decision. They banned smartphones from their entire campus. Now, this is a boarding school, so what that meant was the kids couldn't even have them in their dorm rooms. They had to just leave their phones at their homes, wherever they were from. And what they replaced their phones with were these things called light phones. Some of you may have heard of them before. They can send simple texts, they can place phone calls, and that's about it. No video, no photos, no social media, nothing like that. And when they made this announcement to the school, chaos ensued. I mean, it was wailing and gnashing of teeth. And it wasn't just from the student body, it came also from the parents who really objected to this. But they stuck to their guns as leaders. And 2 months into the experiment, the results were overwhelmingly positive. And by all accounts, continue to be positive to this day. Students report a sense of relief. Isn't that an interesting response? Relief. Freedom from the constant barrage of notifications and the pressure that they were feeling to stay connected, and teachers for themselves, because they joined in with the student body, at least when they were on campus and working, found themselves more present. Engagement in the classroom improved. The feared negative results never happened, never came. And I think that this story and others like it highlights the widespread societal change that having powerful, portable, connected mini computers on us at all times has created. It demonstrates the challenges presented by our constant connection and the ever-present hum of stress that underlies the constant presence of these devices. Now, for our part, we all understand that the genie is not going back into the bottle. We're not all students at Buxton School. We don't have a bunch of principals and administrators that can do us a big solid and make a rule for all of society. We have to make our own decisions. We have to be our own people. No one is going to bail us out. But what I want to say today is that if we're Christians, what we believe is that we are filled with the Spirit of the living God. We don't need our entire environment to change. We don't need our entire society to adopt our perspective or change its system in order to shift the way we live our lives. We've got the Spirit of God to help us live wisely and to follow our Lord. We can tap into God's truth, we can ask for his strength, and we could step out in radical obedience. And even as I say that, I just want to acknowledge having a little discipline with your smartphone is not radical Christianity. It's just a good first step or a step in saying to the Lord, Lord, I want my mind, my body, my heart, my soul, my spirit, I want it to be devoted unto you, and I don't want it to be decayed unnecessarily by the things that I expose myself to. Now, the book of Proverbs, in its foundational chapters, the chapters that we looked at in Proverbs 1 through 9, one of the themes that it presents over and over again is the concept of the two paths. You guys remember that when we went through that section? Just nod your head. It'll make me feel really good. Yep, we remember the two paths. That was part of that puzzle framework that we've talked about in that section of Proverbs. And the concept continually throughout the holding out of those two paths is that wisdom is calling and folly is calling. Righteousness has a path. Wickedness has a path. And Proverbs is saying to its readers, saying to its students, of whom we're trying to be ourselves, it's saying to us, you have a choice to make. You have a choice to make. And I believe the same is true when it comes to our phones. Will we use our devices as instruments for cultivating wisdom, as instruments for fostering righteousness, as instruments for honoring God, as instruments for building real relationships, or will we use them to enable folly? Will we use them as conduits for distraction? Will we use them as means of pursuing ungodly desires, or even will we use them as devices that help destroy community rather than build it? In a sense, Proverbs would say to us, the choice is yours. Your phone or any other connected device can be used with wisdom, it can be used with folly, it can serve God's purposes, it can nurture, it can strengthen, or it can lead to distraction, comparison, addiction, and a total loss of presence. Now, I believe that for lots of human beings, life just sort of happens to them. There's not a lot of intentionality. It just kind of happens to them. And aside from maybe a few feelings of guilt or embarrassment over their screen time, many believers have simply allowed smartphones into their lives without much thought as to how they should be handled. And that's what I want to talk about today. I think Christians in the modern world could benefit from building and then adopting a philosophy on technology, a philosophy on phone usage that is saturated with Scripture, lest they be overcome by their devices. You know, if you're to buy a firearm in the state of California, there's a process that you have to go through. You know, there's a 10-day cooling period, there's an application, there's a background check to check your criminal record and your mental health. There's a test that you have to pass to make sure that you understand how to handle a firearm. After purchase, you're encouraged to get safes and locks and practice gun safety and go to training, go to the firing range, learn how to handle this weapon. And if we do all of this for firearms, when it comes to carrying around the power of our hyper-connected, always-on, temptation-laden devices that impact our minds, impact our habits, impact our psyche, impact our sexuality, impact our relationships, and so much more, I think we ought to approach them with a similar seriousness. We ought to prepare ourselves for these devices. Now, I believe that Proverbs has a lot of things to say that would help us build our philosophy on phones, but today I'm going to interact with three key concepts that Proverbs promotes that might help us navigate these devices with increased wisdom. And I'll just give you a little disclaimer this morning that this was a very difficult teaching for me to prepare for you guys, and that surprised me because this is like a hobby horse subject for me. Like, I love this subject. I love reading Christian literature, secular literature. I almost said the wrong word there. I do not enjoy that. Abe was dying. Secular literature on this subject. I enjoy it a lot. And so it took me a lot of work to make sure, am I rooting myself in some biblical principles rather than just philosophies that I've adopted over the years that have made sense to me, that have helped me navigate this world. Another reason why this subject is a little bit difficult for me is because I know a big part of this issue in people's lives is social media, and I don't like social media. I quit it years ago. I get anxiety when I look over someone else's shoulder who is looking at social media. I start getting just nervous. I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Okay, so I'm not saying it's bad if you're into it, but it's just creates a little distance for me. And then another thing that's challenging is I recognize we're a multi-generational church. We got teenagers in the room today, we got octogenarians in the room today, and everybody in between. And we've all got different ways of handling these devices of ours. You know, some of you guys are hyper connected. Some of you, when the announcement goes on and says silence your phones, you're like, I don't know how to do that. Okay? We're all over the place when it comes to these devices. So I understand the difficulty of what I'm doing right now. But so it was kind of surprised me. Oh, this is a little harder to put together. But I think these three concepts will be helpful to you. And the first one that I see here in Proverbs is that we need to steward our interior world. Steward your interior world. Now, this is a pillar concept in Proverbs. It implores us to protect and to shape our interior lives, to be responsible for it. We've already studied Proverbs 4:23, but it's really the significant verse on this subject. It says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Other translations say, guard your heart. Other translations say, watch over your heart. Other translations say, be careful how you think. The idea is this: everything that we do flows from the condition of our heart. All of life, our actions, our attitudes, our perspectives, which all turn into decisions, which turn into decades, which turn into a full life, it all starts with the heart. In other words, the stakes, according to Proverbs, are high when it comes to the heart. As the New Living Translation puts it, your heart determines the course of your life. So if that's true, then it's vital that our hearts are not being wrongly shaped or unduly influenced, but are instead being cultivated and cared for and shepherded in a righteous direction. Now, sometimes we will admit to a little bit of difficulty with our devices. Sometimes we'll admit to having a hard time setting boundaries with our devices. We might even, with a slight smile, say I'm addicted to this thing, or I'm semi-addicted to this thing. But if we're honest, many have shown us in recent years that Silicon Valley has long understood the power of dopamine. Slot machines tug on people's hearts to pour in their money on the off chance that they might hit the jackpot. And the same instincts are manipulated to get us checking and rechecking our phones. Maybe this time I'll get the notification that makes me feel good. Maybe this time I'll see the photo or the picture, or hear the thing that makes me feel the way that I want to feel. We might joke that we're addicted, but the reality is a lot of us actually are. Sherry Turkle once wrote about this addiction to the neurochemical rewards the constant stimulation of our phones can provide us. Of this addiction, she just said this concerning the phone. She said, we are merely exhibiting a predictable response to a perfectly executed design. She's just saying this phone is perfectly executed to create that kind of addictive response. And I think just seeing things that way, it gets us part of the way toward needed changes. Because when we fail to gain victory in this area, when we habitually give in to the impulse to check and recheck, to open and reopen, we become like the man of Proverbs 25, verse 28. Look at this. It says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Or as the New King James Version puts it, whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls. What I'm trying to say with a quotation like that is that we must not let these digital syringes manipulate and control us. Because if we do, we'll soon find that our brains are scrambled. We won't be able to think deeply. We won't be able to reason clearly. We won't be able to converse meaningfully for more than a few minutes. And as believers created to represent God here on earth in his creation and expand his kingdom as believers and Christians, we need a wholeness of mind and spirit. We've got to steward what God has given us really well. I'd like to illustrate this with an example from modern music. Sometimes I wonder how modern musicians who have been around a while feel about the way that music is distributed today. Because for many of us, we now consume our music through the playlist. You know, sometimes we make the playlist, sometimes someone else makes the playlist. A lot of times a computer makes the playlist for us. And it's just the jams, right? It's the best of the best. It's the vibe that we're looking for. We can find one song and say, make me a whole playlist based off of this one song. And it used to be that artists would, they'd release an album, and as a fan, you would listen from track one all the way to the end of that album. You'd listen to the story that they were trying to tell. You'd capture all the different moods that they were trying to present. They were able as an artist to tell you a story or to take you on a journey. Now it's just, am I vibing this? Nope, skip, and we're moving on to the next thing. And what I want to suggest to you is that when we do not control ourselves when it comes to these devices of ours, we begin to have more of what I call playlist brain than album brain. Playlist brain is flitting about from thing to thing. Playlist brain cannot focus. Playlist brain cannot concentrate. Playlist brain looks at the black and white text of a printed Bible in front of them and just starts freaking out. How do I linearly move through this holy text? But album brain is able to say, no, I can think, I can ponder, I can meditate. This is what we want to have, and we need it by guarding, we develop it by guarding our hearts. Proverbs 16, verse 32 says, he who rules his spirit is stronger than he who takes a city. You know what he's saying right there? Solomon is saying to his son in this ancient context, if you have self-control, it is a power stronger than the military might required to take down an ancient city. Like, think of it in our modern context. The ability to have this kind of self-control, it's like a nuclear weapon level of strength. This is what God is trying to bring us into, that kind of self-control, which is one of the fruits of the Spirit. Because if we're not careful, we can become completely overrun. Our eyes begin to glaze over, our attention atrophies, and soon we resemble the comical character of the sluggard that the book of Proverbs often decries. I don't know if you've seen this guy as you've read through the book of Proverbs. He's got crazy excuses for everything. Like Proverbs 26, verse 13, he's like, I can't go outside. There's a lion in the streets. He's like, there was no lion. He's just saying, like, maybe there is. I'll just stay inside today. He is portrayed as unable to bring his hand up from the dish. He's like, I've got the energy to take a scoop of cereal, but I don't have the energy to get it back all the way to my mouth. That's too hard. He's like a door, Proverbs 26:14, that turns on its hinges in his bed. It's like a comical way of saying, like, the atrophy, it just creates this kind of stuff in you. They're completely dominated. They have no self-mastery. And this is what happens when the heart goes unguarded. And that's why Proverbs starts here. Keep your heart, protect your interior life, for from it flow the springs of life. Now, lest you think I'm being a little legalistic right now, and I'm not presenting the fullness of God's grace, I want to remind you that a major facet of the gospel is rescue from slavery. Jesus came to set the captive free. Just as ancient Israel was freed from their Egyptian overlords, so Christ came to set us free from the powers that bind us. He lived and died so that he could redeem us and set us free from the prisons of life. So why would we go back to Egypt by allowing ourselves to be dominated by any screen, by any website, or by any device? Look at what Paul said in Galatians chapter 5, verse 1. He said, for freedom, Christ has set us free. Why did he set you free? So you could have freedom. So you could be free. Do not, he said, submit again to a yoke of slavery. I once spoke with a woman, or recently spoke with a woman whose retired dad kept sending her multiple YouTube links about a myriad of subjects every day. You know, just constant, random YouTube links. And he'd recently retired, not much going on. And so I joked, and I was like, well, hey, maybe when I do my teaching in Proverbs on phones, I'll put a little snippet in there like advice on when to send a YouTube link to your adult children, you know, or something like that, you know, just some guidance. And she looked at me and she said, it's not the sending that I'm worried about. I don't even mind that. I don't even mind receiving them. It's the hours and the life that he's wasting on his computer. It's a daughter who knows that her father is made for more. She's right, he is. We must steward our interior world. That's my first point I wanted to share with you. The second one is this: we have to demonstrate integrity in that private world. We have to demonstrate integrity in that private world. What the modern phone does, I don't know if you've thought about this before, with its small little screen and its easily connected headphones, is it makes it effortless to privately look at or listen to inappropriate content for believers. It's one thing it does. It just makes it such a personal, private experience. You're not watching a television out there in your room where people are maybe walking by that are living in your household. You're just there privately on your device. Now, pornography is an obvious example, but the temptations run far and wide beyond just pornography. Crude websites, highly sexualized social feeds, suggestive podcasts, all kinds of inappropriate streaming content can potentially bombard our screens every single day. And we have to be on guard against all content that spoils the soul in the online space. Proverbs 11, verse 3 says it this way: the integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. Proverbs 10, verse 9 says it this way: whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. If you take verses like these and combine them with the many proverbs that give warnings against sexual immorality or greed or slander or hypercritical speech or friendship with fools, what the book is constantly saying or imploring us to do is watch out for what you are exposing yourself to. Through this 5-inch computer in your hand, all that is in the world can come rushing towards you. You know, John told us that the things in the world are the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life. The desires of the flesh are what you want to feel. The desires of the eyes are what you want to have. And the pride of life are who you want to be. And our phones can shape all of that, nurture all of that in negative directions if we're not careful. If we're not careful, we'll train ourselves, shape ourselves in a direction entirely opposed to our Lord simply by what we watch, by what we read, by what we listen to. And if we fail to demonstrate integrity, these devices, I could say it like this, they become little gods, telling us what to value, telling us what to bow down to, telling us what to think, telling us who to become. Can you imagine if I was selling a device that went like this? Hey, I've got a little God. It's about 5 inches tall. It's going to sit in your pocket and it's going to yell at you all day. Think like this. Value this. Do this. Prioritize this. Nobody would buy that device. But that's what a lot of us have put in our pockets without knowing it. Because phones offer such privacy, we have to pursue, I think, radical integrity. We have to recognize our tendency to wander and either lock down our phones, our devices, or open them up so that other people are exposed to them, or both, so that we don't easily slip into sin. Paul the Apostle wrote in 1 Corinthians 10:13, "No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man." What this helps us understand is that there is no temptation. None of us is above temptation, so none of us is above the need for practicing integrity in this area of our lives, especially with devices that give us constant private access to the world. For many of us, as I said, the wisest move is to make our phones anything but private. I've recommended already to you guys in previous teachings, and by the way, this sermon is completely written out and online at nateholdridge.com if you'd like to go there and see some of the things that I'm recommending. But you might want to be a person who installs some kind of accountability software on all your devices so that your usage is reported to trusted friends and mentors or spouses. And the service I use for that is called Covenant Eyes. It could also mean that you want to employ services that block vast chunks of the internet to kill distractions so that you can focus. And the service I use for that is called Freedom. And that's also listed online. Will just help you get your focus back. Recently, I learned that pro golfer Rory McIlroy, I'm not a golf fan, but he won the recent Masters golf tournament, which is a huge deal. And he attributed a little bit of his victory to his treatment of his phones when he comes to a tournament weekend. He's a fan of Cal Newport, who's an author who wrote books like Digital Minimalism and Deep Work, and I'm a fan of his as well. And what I discovered is that Rory McIlroy uses Freedom also. And on tournament weekends, he just locks down his phone so that he's unable to access so much of the chatter that is out there online about his performance. He does it so that he can focus on the task at hand with the ultimate goal of winning a golf tournament. And obviously, that might be helpful advice for us or a good example for us in our own lives, but I just want to use his actions as a metaphor for our lives. I think if we take this area of our lives seriously, we can win, man. There's souls to win, there's lives to change, there's stuff to do, there's people to mentor, there's a kingdom to expand. If we are disciplined in this area, it will help us to accomplish the goals that God has laid in front of us. With deliberate, focused integrity, we can grow, we can mature. But if we allow the filth, the distractions, or even the shallow perspectives of the world to stream endlessly into our eyes and ears through these devices, we will not progress as we should. All right, I want to take you now to my last point. Number 3, And it's just simply this. The Proverbs will tell us, we need to be present in the physical world. We need to be present in the physical world. God, as I mentioned to you in our study on friendship, the triune God, he's always been relational, with perfect relationship within himself, Father, Son, and Spirit. God is a relational God. He created us to be relational beings, to connect to him, but also to connect to each other. God is also omnipresent. That means that God is everywhere all at once. And though we are relational, like our relational God, we are not omnipresent like our omnipresent God. But what the digital world does is secretly or quietly suggest a level of omnipresence that just is not real for us. It tempts us with the myth of our own omnipresence. But look at what Proverbs 27 verse 10 says. It says, "Do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away." I think what's being said there is there are friends, sometimes even our parents' friends, who can be closer or better to us than a distant family member, a distant brother. In times of real legitimate trouble, the neighbor who is physically near might be better than the sibling that is far away. Now, this challenges the way that we often handle relationships on our phones. We cultivate networks of people who are nowhere near our physical space, and we begin to believe that a video on the screen or a voicemail in the earbuds or a few lines of text are more valuable than the people in the room. Now, we all recognize the incredible benefits that this connectedness gives to us. I mean, it's just a miracle of our modern time. I mean, just in these last few days, I had a video chat with one of my daughters who's off at college. I texted encouragements to pastoral friends who are in other states. I called people who were physically far from me and impossible for me to drive over to and have a conversation with. Everybody understands this. Deployed soldiers, scattered families, isolated Christians all over the world are thankful for our connectedness. So I'm not trying to downplay that. We understand that there can be great benefits to these devices. But what I'm trying to highlight here is that the digital space, the digital realm, is packed with really interesting people. You know, attractive people, talented people, educated people, hilarious people, stylish people, cultured people. Even though we're only seeing a curated sliver quite often of who they really are, they are fascinating. And what I want to suggest to you is that they'll probably be more interesting than the real people in your life. It's just going to be the reality. They're going to be just like fascinating in so many different ways. And because of these features, it can be tempting to trade people in our physical spaces for those in the digital space. But in the end, they remain digital beings. We're not interacting with the whole person. And Proverbs and all of Scripture calls us to prioritize real, embodied relationships. You guys, we serve a king who came to dwell with us in bodily form. He walked around with what I'm sure at times were very dull and boring people for him. These disciples, you know, he was making them into something, but it doesn't appear that they were the cream of the crop. But he loved them. He ate with them. He drank with them. He talked with us. Some of us, we've just got this bar that is so high for our interpersonal relationships and connections. Jesus, he extended himself and said, I want to be with these people. And in our hyper-digitized world, I think we're living in a time where the church has an opportunity. A lot of people are discovering that physical interaction is healthier for the mind. It's healthier for the body. It's healthier for the soul. You ever wonder why there seems to be a never-ending stream of new coffee shops? It's not really that we need more coffee. I mean, coffee is great. We love it. But I think we've got this thing that says, I need to be around people. I don't even know how to really do it all that well, but I'll just go sit at this table. I'll put my headphones on. I'll open my laptop. I'll send out every signal that I do not want to talk to you. But I think I need to be around you. It's an instinct within us. We're an embodied species, you guys. We're not spirits trapped in flesh. We're humans meant to live in and through our physicality. God gave us these bodies to help us love, help us communicate, help us convey truth, help us to be truly known. And we serve a God who became flesh and dwelt among us. That's why the church remains, I think, one of the great bastions of gathering. Even our name, the church, comes from a Greek word that means the congregation. They congregate. They gather, the gathering. When we do this, when we see each other face to face, we just pick up on so much more than we pick up on through a screen or through the written form. We observe the slumping shoulders of someone who's depressed. We see the pep in the step of someone who just got engaged. We see the vacant stare of someone who's in the throes of grief. When we hear voices raised in worship and proclamation, when we watch older married couples or lifelong singles, men and women, young and old, respond in prayer and praise to God, it is doing something to us. We're leaning into the Word together. We're nudging one another towards allegiance to Jesus. We shake hands. We hug. We change diapers. We down coffee because we are physical beings in a physical space. We get so much from being with each other. Jesus said it like this to his disciples. He said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another." And some of us love to take a verse like that and just go like, I feel it, man. I feel love for them. I'm not going to be around them. I don't really want to know them, but I love them. But Jesus said this right after he girded himself, took a basin of water, and began washing the feet of his disciples. It was physical. It was close. It was unappealing. But he's saying proximity is important if you're going to be able to express love. And I think this is an opportunity for the church in our modern time. God made the world. He placed us in it to image him. Sin tarnished that image, but God so loved the world that he sent his son. Jesus began a new humanity when he died on the cross and rose from the dead. And now he sends us into this world. And if we're going to be the salt and light that God calls us to be, we got to steward our interior world. We got to walk with integrity in our private world and remain present in the physical world. If we don't, the mission of God will suffer. All right, let me close today by just giving you some suggested next steps. There's going to be 7 of them, so those of you who don't like to look at these notes online, but you like to take pictures, just wait for the 7th one. Otherwise, you're going to take 7 pictures. Number 1, audit your phone life. I would just encourage you this week. You know, we don't have life group this week, so you don't have that mandatory opportunity to go back and kind of wrestle with these things, but just do a little auditing. You know, where am I at? Do I have the control that I'd like to have? Number 2, if needed, repent and confess. These are Jesus-y words. These are Bible words. These are gospel words. These are good words. These are grace-filled words. It's amazing that we get the opportunity from the living God to turn from our sin, to confess it to him. It's amazing. He's not like, oh man, you failed again, didn't you? No, he's inviting us to recognize and to turn to him. Number 3, write a short personal phone philosophy. Just something like, I will not be controlled by my devices. I will not be used by my devices. My devices will be used by me, and I will control them. Something like that. If you have to add details, add some details. I'm not going to be getting online before lunchtime. I'm not going to look at social media until I've spent time with Jesus that day. Something like that. If you need to, write it out. Number 4, make adjustments to your phone. If you got to install some of the stuff I said to install, or you got to delete some of the things I said to delete, you got to do what you need to do it. You can strip it down. You can make it as simple as you need it to be. You can get a dumb phone if you need to. You could have no phone if you want to, but do what you need to do. And then number 5, tell your people about your commitments. Tell them, this is what I'm doing. If you don't hear from me right away, this is what's going on. Make that decision, but let it be known what's happening. And then I would say, if you're a parent, number 6, lead the way, man. Lead the way. Sometimes I see parents and it's like, they won't get off the phone. You have a responsibility for that child. That story I told at the beginning, the kids were relieved because the grown-ups intervened. Psychologists like Anna Lemke said of that episode, it was overwhelming. They couldn't make the decision themselves. They needed someone to rescue them. And as parents, we need to do that, but oftentimes there's this vicious cycle with parents and kids where it's like, they're on the phone all the time, I guess I'll be on my phone. And then the kid looks at you, and you're on your phone, so they just go back to their phone a little bit more. So figure it out. I put some book recommendations at the end of my teaching notes. One of them is about being a tech-wise family. You might want to read that and see some principles for how to navigate this in your own home. But lead the way. Your parent is a position, and it's also something that you do. It's an action. Okay? So parent. And then number 7, I would say social media. And again, like I told you earlier, I'm not the greatest at giving advice about this because I just don't even like social media. But everything that I've read says that one great way to handle it if you're having an issue with it is to batch it. And what I mean by that is just say I'm going to take an hour and a half on a Saturday morning. I'm going to go to coffee. I'm going to log into all my accounts. I'm going to check in, do all my posting or whatever, see everything I need to see. I'm pretty sure that in 90 minutes, you'll get everything that you need to get for that next week. And then you just shut it all down and you don't revisit it until the following week. That might be good advice. Not in the Bible, just a word of wisdom there for you. All right?
Thanks for listening to this message. I want to just remind you, don't forget the show notes, which actually is a transcription of the entire message, which includes a lot of practical insights at the end, as well as resources for further study and reading. Now the announcer is going to tell you how to get in touch with Poyman Ministries. May the Lord bless you and strengthen you in your ministry for and to and by Him. In Jesus' name.
Strength for Today's Pastor is sponsored by Poyman Ministries. You can find us at poymanministries.com. That's spelled Poimen ministries.com. If something in today's program prompts a question or comment, or if you have a topic idea for a future episode, just shoot us an email at strongerpastors@gmail.com. That's strongerpastors@gmail.com. May the Lord bless you as you serve Him, His pastors, and His church.